All right. Be'ezus Hashem, we're beginning. Be'ezus Hashem, we're beginning Maseches Shekalim, and it's interesting that the reason why we learn Maseches Shekalim, even though there's no Talmud Bavli in there, but practically speaking, they when they printed the Talmud Bavli, they included Maseches Shekalim in there, and they just put in they put in over there the Yerushalmi there. Why they did that, it perhaps is to make it more complete of Seder Moed. But what's interesting in Daf Yomi parlance, it depends what version of Shas you have at home. Some Shasin will have the Masechta Shekalim only like 12 blot or 13 blot. And some of them have it at 22 blot of Yerushalmi. So because it's not like the Bavli, which is pretty much standard of how a blot looks, it looks different. The Yerushalmi of Shekalim looks different in every Shas. So, but for most Shases, it was 22. Actually, if you look back at the original Daf Yomi cycle, they only had 13 blot for Shekalim, dedicated for Shekalim. And then they realized that most people are not buying that version of Shas that had it at 13, and they expanded the Daf Yomi cycle to give it 22 days for Shekalim. One other point is that basically on the page over here, which I'm using the Steinsaltz, but it's pretty much similar, there are two Perushim over here. One is called the Karban Eda, which is like a Rashi format, and the author is David Frankel, his name was, and he lived in 1740 or something like that. It seems should have been enough, one Rashi, and they added a Tiklin Chadatin. The reason is because this Karban Eda is an interesting fellow, this Rabbi David Frankel. He turned out to be the rabbi of Moses Mendelssohn. And Moses Mendelssohn was his student, the Karban Eda, Rabbi David Frankel. So therefore, this is not as studied as much as the Tiklin Chadatin, which was Rav Yisrael Shklov, who is the Talmud of the Vilna Gaon. He actually was a big Talmud of the Vilna Gaon. He actually became a rabbi in Syria and then ended up in Safas in Jerusalem, and he is buried there. So that's the two Rashis like on the page. The language is a little different in the Yerushalmi. The language is very different in the Yerushalmi, but the gist is pretty much the same once you get the hang of it. So let's begin. Be'achad, in the beginning, the first day of Adar, Mashmin al Hashkolim, you make an announcement that everybody should bring their new shekels to a pushka that was collected on behalf of the Beis Hamikdash, a half a shekel. And now you can see why it was brought in Seder Moed. If this new shekel was for the karbonos, to buy new karbonos for the Beis Hamikdash, this Masechta should be in Kachim, not in Moed. But since we just got through Psachim, which deals with the month of Nisan, this also, since this Shekalim was specifically, the announcements and the collection was made in Adar, it was included in Moed. So on the first day of Adar, they made an announcement, al hashkolim, people should get ready to donate a half a shekel to the Beis Hamikdash. Ba'al hakilayim, and also if you by accident planted, let's say, a grape with a wheat in your field, so to uproot the kilayim, to look out to make sure that there's no kilayim in your field, because so before it takes root, make sure to uproot it. So that's what they would, because at this time people started in the spring planting, so they warned you, be careful of kilayim. Uba Chabisha Asabai, on the 15th day of Adar, which is Shushan Purim. So what did they do on the 15th day? Kairin es Hamegillah Bakrakim. As you know, in Yerushalayim, or cities that have a wall around them, they would read the Megillah on the 15th day of Adar. What else did you do on the 15th day of Adar? Umasaknin es Hadrachim. they would do road work for the highways leading up to Jerusalem, because in another month, people are going to start using the highways to come for Oila Regel. So at that time, they would get the construction people out to start fixing the roads. The ways, the highways, the streets, Vesmikvais Hamayim. And mikvahs hamayim means that they would fix the mikvahs throughout the winter. Some of the mikvahs were filled with mud and needed repair to make it kosher again. So they would go and send out construction teams to check out the various mikvahs throughout Yerushalayim and the surrounding areas in Israel to make sure that everybody there, the mikvahs are in working order. Again, this is all to anticipate the huge crowds of people that are going to start being oila reged. And they do every type of public works. The Gemara is going to explain what other public works did they do. Another thing is umetzainin esakvaris. The graves, they would just remark the graves, because throughout the winter, some of the markings of the graves were lost, and kohanim are now coming to be oile regel. So what they did was they made sure to remark the graves. I didn't think they had tombstones then. They just had like a white wash over the gravesite, and sometimes you wouldn't notice it. So they had to paint it, so to speak. So the kohanim who are coming up to oile regel and walking around should not step on those grave sites. And the yotzin apalaklayim, they would send their own task force to check the fields to make sure that there's no klayim. Suppose somebody didn't listen and uproot the klayim in his field, right? So then they would have like a task force that would go out like shomrim and would go to people's fields to uproot the klayim. If you didn't do it, they'll do it for you, and they do it a lot harsher than you did. So those were the things that they did on the Shushan Purim. And the chiddush is that although it's Shushan Purim, they dafka started taking care of public needs on Shushan Purim. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah, and the Mishnah said on the first day of Adar, Mashmi'in al Hashkolim. They made an announcement on the shuls to bring Yamachzas a shekel. So the Gemara says, V'loma be'echad ba'adar. Why did they have to do it in the first day of Adar? I know that people have to donate to the Beis Hamikdash, but why the first day in Adar? So the Gemara says, "Kidei shiyaviu es Yisrael eshikleseim ba'oin nosan," so that everybody should donate their shekels in the time. V'titorein trumas halishka, and they will take off from that pushka, from that collection, min hachadasha, from the new monies, bisman in its time, be'achad b'nisan, the first of Nisan. In other words, that the new karbonos, tzibor, for example, the tamid, the musafim, and all the karbonos that were brought on behalf of the tzibor, that had to be purchased from new monies at the first of Nisan. So that in order for the Beis Hamikdash to have all money to make those purchases, everybody had to donate during the month of Adar. So by the time they finished the month of Adar, all the Jews made their donation, and they brought it to the Beis Hamikdash, and from the first day of Nisan, they broke open those pushkas, so to speak, and bought new karbanos for the Tamid and all those karbanos that are brought on behalf of the Tzibur. So that's the point of Achad Ba'adar. Umar means, it's like says Omar, like that's in Yerushalmi language. It says, he said. Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yitzchak said. How do you know that it is the first day of Nisan that they brought and they paid for new karbanos? Trumas halishka, the taking off from the pushka. In other words, buying the new karbanos, hitchilasa, it was like the day of the inauguration of the base of the Mishkan. That's the timing. The Ksiv, Vahi b'chodesh harishon b'shana shenis b'echad l'chodesh hukam Mishkan. The Mishkan, as you know, in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, was inaugurated on the first of Nisan, right? So that is a open pasuk in the Chumash. And V'tana Allah, the Brisa taught us, B'yoyim shehukam HaMishkan, the day that the Mishkan was finally set up for the first time, by B'yoyim nitruma hatruma, At that day, they separated out from the collection to buy new carbonis. So the fact that let's say the new monies have to be purchased and the starting point is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, according to Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, it's not really written in the Chumash. It just says in the Chumash that the inauguration of the Mishkan for the first time was the 1st of Nisan. That's clear. So presumably the Brisa says that day, how did they get money to buy the new carbonos? That day they took the collection money and bought new carbonos and brought the carbonos on behalf of the tzibur. So that's Rav Shmuel Bar Rav Yitzchak's where he thought it from. Rav Tavi, Rav Yoshia B'Shem Kahana, he says I have another source, and the source is a little cryptic, but here it is. I'm going to go down a little bit because the pasuk really says Zois Oilais Chodesh B'Chodshay L'Chodshay Hashana. That's a pasuk we read in the shuls on Rosh Chodesh. So he's going to darshan that the pasuk is saying the oila, that means the tamid, is Chodesh, should be brought from new monies, b'chodshay, 1 month a year, l'chodshay hashana, that chodshay means Nisan. That's what it's going to say. How do you know? Nema kan chodshay, it says in the pasuk chodshay, v'nema lahalon, but l'chodshay, it says also by, when it refers to carbon, when it refers to carbon, it says the word chodshay regarding the month of Nisan. Ma chodshay, just like the chodshay. She'nema lahalan, that it says by, in Parshas by ein moinen elam Nisan, that the word chodshay means Nisan, af chodshay. So also the word chodshay in this pasuk, she'nema kan, ein moinen elam Nisan. It means Nisan. So this is a cryptic way to quote a brisa. So Omer Rab Yoina just rebuked Rab Tavi. He said, Shavak Rab Tavi Roisha Damas Nisan. Rab Tavi, in quoting the brisa, just left out the beginning of the brisa, and therefore what he's saying is makes no sense. V'alma Soifen, he says only the end of the brisa. Dal Kain. So what he's saying is missing things, and it's very hard to understand what he's saying. In other words, some people speak in half sentences, and you can't figure out what they're saying. It's because they left out a basic point, and that's what this Rav Yoina was rebuking Rav Tavi. Now Rav Yoina quotes the whole brisa, so everything makes sense. Kahada de Tani. It's like the brisa. This is what the brisa says: Zois oilas chodesh b'chodshay. That means. This is the chodesh means take new monies and buy carbonos. B'chodshay, what does b'chodshay teach you? So the Brisa says, Yochel yehei toirem b'chol chodesh v'chodesh. I would have thought that you have to take off every month. Everybody has to make donations to the Beis Hamikdash for that month. And every month you have to take new monies. Talmud loimer b'chodshay. You do it only in its month, or 1 month you do it. 1 month a year, you collect for the whole year. Not you do it every single month. L'chodshay, which month do you collect for the whole year? The word l'chodshay teaches it that the month that you're collecting for the whole year is the month prior to Nisan. B'chodesh echad hu tarem l'chol chodshay hashana. Yochol be'ezeh chodesh year. So I might think you pick any month. Nema kan chodshay, v'nema lan chodshay. Malan chodshay shnemal hana imoyel menisan. So that word chodshay with a gzeres shava teaches you that the brand new monies where you purchase the carbonos start from Nisan. Not every single month, but every Nisan you take the monies that were collected in the prior month of Adar. Now you have brand new monies. You can use that monies to purchase the carbonos for that year. So we have two sources. One is a svara source, that Nisan is the month where you have to have brand new monies in the Mishkan, in the Beis Hamikdash, and another is more of a limit from the pasuk. Now, the Gemara now discusses a new thing. Mahu mashmiin. What is the word mashmiin? The word, I told you what it means. Be'achad ba'adar mashmiin. They would make an announcement in all the shuls in Israel that you should give shkalim. But what does it mean, mashmiin? So we said, Rav Huda Amar Machrizin, you make an announcement. The word Mashmiim, you make an announcement. Now, I want to point out to you, the way we do our announcements today is we know that one of the Dalit Parshas is Parshas Shekalim, right? So they read Parshas Tisisa to remind everybody that they should prepare money to donate to the Mishkan, to the Beis HaMikdash. But the Mishnah is saying something more than that, because there are some places, let's say little towns and villages, they didn't have a Sefer Torah. So they weren't reading Parshas Shekalim. So there they had to make announcements, there's signs or something like that, that people, that's what Machrizin means. That's why they had to make an announcement in all places. Heich ma da'at Omar, it's very similar to what a pasuk says, that Vayitnu kol b'Yehuda b'Yerushalayim. What the Gemara is trying to say is, why do they have to make an announcement that the people should donate money? Why don't they trust that the Jewish people on their own are going to donate shkalim? Do they make an announcement, get ready, you're going to read Megillah in a month's time, or get ready, build a sukkah, or get ready, bring a carbon Pesach? What is it so something about donating to the Beis HaMikdash? So the pasuk in Sefania says, "Vayitnu kol b'Yehuda b'Yerushalayim," to bring the tax. We see that in the Tanakh that already they made announcement to bring the tax of machzis shekel to the Beis HaMikdash, because they didn't trust. It's like I know Shari or whatever, when they make when they renew the memberships, till people get around to paying for it, it's like a few months into the cycle. Because you forget or whatever, you take it for granted. So therefore, specifically for Shekalim, they made announcements to make sure that you have 30 days in advance to prepare your money to donate to the Beis HaMikdash. Now the Gemara says, what happens if you have two Adars? Tamam Tanina, we learned in another Mishnah. This Mishnah, I think, is in Masechta Megillah. Ein bein Adar Harishon la'Adar Hasheni elamikra Megillah u'matanois le'evyonim, which means that there's no difference between Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni, except that in Adar Sheni you read the Megillah and you make the gifts of Shlach Manos and Matanos le'evyonim. Rav Simon b'Shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi af shimu'a shkalim v'kalayim b'neiim. That means the announcements of shkalim and the uprooting of kalayim, the announcements about kalayim, that's also done in Adar Sheni, not Adar Rishon. And why not? Why don't they make, if they're going to announce it, maybe announce it in Adar Rishon? Why did I have to wait to Adar Sheni? So Omar, you skipped it following Rabbi Chelboy is skipped. That's why I have it in red over here. You skip a line or two to Omar Rabbi Yossi. B'ya'os, that makes perfectly sense. Why? Because if you're going to announce it too early, what's going to happen is you have 60 days to bring it, people are going to forget. It's human psychology. B'ya'os makes correct. Kulum abri mashmin al shkalim. The whole purpose of making the announcement of shkalim, loy kadesh yavi Yisrael shekalim ba'inasan, isn't it so that the Jewish people should bring their shkalim in its time? So im at omar ba'adar harishon, if you're going to say bring it in first Adar, ad kedoin is b'shata shitin yomin. Yes, people are going to say, oh, I have 60 days to make that machzis shekel donation. I have plenty of time. And they're going to forget. So that's why you do it in Adar Sheni, the first of Adar Sheni. If you have two Adars, do it the first of Adar Sheni. Klum amru yotzin afal kalayim. What's the whole point that they would send messengers to uproot kalayim? Loy kedei she'et tzemachim nikorim. So that the task force should recognize where the kalayim is. You could see it starting to sprout. But if you send them too early, you send them in Adar Rishon, it's at that time, it's still very small. If you send the task force to uproot kalayims in people's fields and they go in Adar Rishon, they're not going to notice it because no growth happened yet. That's why they did kalayim. And of course, what we mentioned before, the announcement of Shekalim went in Adar Sheni, not Adar Rishon. Now comes a new Gemara, a new thought. And this thought is like this, Rav Chizkiya's thought. He said like this, Rav Chizkiya Sho'al, he asked this question. He said, Ma'ata, if you live B'nai Bavel, you shouldn't wait to Rosh Chodesh Adar to get ready for the Shekalim. They should make people in Iraq, Bavel, should make the announcement for shekels, because they also have to donate to the Beis Hamikdash. They should make their announcements already in, let's say, January time, because there was not too much travel between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael all the time. So they need more time to send their money to Eretz Yisrael. So that's what he said, and this is what he thought. B'nei Babel mashmiim al shkalim b'roishai shel chayif, at the beginning of the winter, January 1st, they should, make the announcements in Bavel to send money to the Beis Hamikdash, because the whole purpose is loy kadesh yavi Yisrael sheklein ba'oinasan. The whole purpose is to bring their shekels in the right time. So if you live in Bavel, you need more time to send your money into the Beis Hamikdash. So there, he thought that you should make the announcement at the beginning of the winter, so that they could buy with the new monies. All the new monies from all the distant places where Jews live should come in time on the 1st of Nisan. So Hasiv Rab Ula Kaimei Ramana. Rab Ula disagreed. He said that no, I think that if you live in Bavel, the announcement happened Rosh Chodesh Adar, but your money probably came in after Nisan because you live too far away. Because I'll prove it to you. Bataninam, because we have a Mishnah. The Mishnah says B'shloisha Prakim, at 3 times a year. Bashana Tarmes Alishkam. They broke open and they took money from that pushka, from that big pushka of that collected all the shkalim. They took it, they opened it up, the price HaPesach, 15 days before Pesach, which is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The price Atzeres, 15 days before Shavuos. The price Chag, 15 days before Sukkot, like Rosh Hashanah time. Why did they have to open it 3 times? Amalei, don't you say, Amalei, Neymar, let us say, Elin de Kriven, those that are close, that live very close to the Beis Hamikdash, they were able to get their money in the price HaPesach, right before Pesach. Elin de Rechoikim, those that live further away, right? The price Atzeres, their monies arrived very close to Shavuos time. The Elin de Rechoikim, the ones that really live far away from the Beis Hamikdash, by the time they got their money in, it probably came in during the summer. That's why they broke open the Pishka, the price Chag, 15 days before Sukkot. In other words, from this Mishnah, it seems to imply that everybody got the announcement Rosh Chodesh Adar, no matter how far you live from the Beis Hamikdash. But the fact is that some people's monies didn't come in until much later, simply because there was no travel between where they lived and the Beis Hamikdash. That's why they had to open the pushka 3 times. Now we go to Amud Sheni. Amalai, kulai ka'achas hiba. In other words, no. Really, they all came in at the same time. And therefore, the people that live far away started preparing to bring their shkalim already in the beginning of the winter, knowing that, like in Bavel. So why did they break open the pushka 3 times? Why did they break open the pushka 3 times? If the money, all the Jewish people's money throughout the world arrived in the Beis Hamikdash at one time, Echad B'Nisan, why did they open up the pushka 3 times? Kedei lasois pumbe ledavar, to make it a big publication about this. In other words, they wanted to show that we need everybody's money. Everybody's money count. And we're still breaking open the pushka because we didn't have enough money until then. And therefore, that encouraged people that even if you live far away from the Beis Hamikdash, the Beis Hamikdash made this shebang by breaking open the pushka 3 times a year to show everybody we still need your money, and therefore don't be negligent about donating to the Mishkan, to the Beis Hamikdash, even though you don't live so close. I think the yeshivas got that idea because they always are claiming they're flat broke. So therefore, that's the idea. We need everybody's money.
It's possible also maybe really people couldn't afford it until then for some reason.
Absolutely.
And it gives them a chance. They shouldn't be shy about it and embarrassed that it's only one time. If you don't get it in, this way it won't embarrass them.
Well, I think the monies that were requested was very minimal, that it was so affordable that there was no person that had an excuse he couldn't afford it. It was a half a shekel, very,
Mhm.
they're buying just animals, but think about the millions of people that are donating. But
Right.
the person could say, look at the, I'm quoting the Tikli Chadatin. That's the Rashi from, let's say, the Rabbi Shklov. He said, "L'chein hoyatomim bezmanan alalu leman yedu kulam sheyesh l'chol echad misrael chelep b'chol kabanas tzibur shemakrivim b'chol yom b'yom." To tell everybody, we need you have a part of this, and therefore I'm breaking open the shekel because I'm using your money. Those that live far away, even though technically your money arrived in Nissan, I'm getting to your money because I need it now because I ran out of money to buy carbonas.
Understood.
A person could say, "Listen, it's a 50 cents. What am I gonna? What do they need my 50 cents for? I live.
Right.
I'm never gonna see the Beis Hamikdash. You know,
Mhm.
if everybody saw the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, now the Gemara is like Agadata Gemara, a very interesting Gemara. Rabbi Huda ben Pazi b'shem Rebbe. Rabbi Huda ben Pazi said in the name of Rebbe, "Hey Nikra v'loy boys, would you read the following psukim and not be frightened? When it comes to Latoiva, for the Jews doing something good, like donating to the Mishkan, it says Kol Nediv Liv, anybody who had a generous heart. L'Ra'ah, when it came to the donating to the Egel, it says Vaispoku Kol Ha'am, all the people, whether you had a generous heart or didn't, you donated to the Egel. So we see when it comes to doing bad, it's more of a crowd. L'Toiva, when it comes to doing good, it says by Matan Torah, by Yotzi Moshe had to bring the people out to come to the Kabbalahs of the Torah. L'Ra, when it describes something bad in the Chumash, and about complaining against Moshe, let's say they don't have food or they don't have water or they want to test out Eretz Yisrael, sending Meraglim. But everybody came to me asking me to send Meraglim. Everybody was involved in that. When it comes to L'Toiva, doing something good, it's Oz Yashir Moshe. Moshe had to encourage the Jewish people to sing, and then Ubnei Israel. L'Ra, when it came to bad things, it says Vatisa Kol Ha'eda. Everybody on their own started to crying and make noise. So it's interesting. It's a funny thing of the Chumash that describes when the people did good. It was not everybody, but when people did bad, it was everybody. But then Amar Abkiya Bar Abba, there's a pasuk that says Ochein Hishkimu Hishchisu, that everybody gets up early and does destructive things. Anytime they did some destruction, they would get up very early. Like you see by the Egel, the pasuk says Vayashkimu Mumachos. They got up even before daybreak to do the Egel. And when it comes to donations, it says Vahei Meviu Baboike in the morning. So when it comes to doing good, they waited till it was morning time. When it came to doing bad, the Egel, everybody was up at dawn already by Shkimu. That's a pasuk that's describing that we get up very early to do some destructive acts. But this is a famous statement, and this is a very interesting statement about the Jewish people in general. Rab Abba Bar Acha. Rab Abba Bar Acha said, Ein ata yochel lamed al oifya shel umazu. Nobody can understand the psychology of our nation. This nation means the Jewish people. Nitboy le'egel, when they're asked to give for the egel, v'noisten, people donate. Nitboy le'mishkan, when we're asked to give to the mishkan, v'noisten, we give. In other words, he's trying to say is that the fact that Jewish people give to the egel and give to the mishkan is just the nature of Jewish people is to give. They're not. They like to donate and give, whether it makes sense or not makes sense. I think that this is some of the motivation of some of the destructive donations of the world come from Soros and his ilk, Jewish people, who by nature, Jews don't like to hoard, they like to give. And therefore, sometimes they're asked to give to the Egel, they give. When it comes to giving the Mishkan, they're also giving. Tana Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Hadom Masnita. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said, not really true from the Egel and the Mishkan. You can't compare. The reason why the Jewish people gave so generously to the Egel, to the Mishkan, because it was a kapara for the Egel. Vasisa kapara zav tahar, yavai zav shel kaparas v'chaper al zav shel Egel. the gold of the kaparis should give a forgiveness of the kaparis of the egel, of the avera of the egel. So it was the Jewish people donated freely to the Mishkan because they knew it was a kapara for the egel. So if you want to understand the Jewish people, is you can't really understand it just by looking at how they donated to the egel and how they donated to the Mishkan. That doesn't define the Jewish people. The Gemara goes back to the Gemara goes back to Trumas Shekalim. I want to point out one thing that's important to realize. We say always machzas shekel was collected to buy karbanos tzibur. The truth is that if the Bezdin decided that we need more money than the machzas shekel that's going to come in, they said that everybody should give a shekel. The minimum was a machzas shekel. It depends what the value of a shekel was and the price of animals were. They had an idea of how many animals they're going to need throughout the year. And of course, then they made the cheshbon of how much people should donate. But the minimum was machzas shekel, but often they would ask even for a shekel or a shekel and a half. Depends on the value. But one time in the Chumash, it says everybody donated a machzas shekel was to donate for the building of the Adanim. That was the part of that was the bottom of the sockets of where they put the Mishkan in. I'll just point it up over here so you see it. These sockets over here, right? The bottom are called, turned it around. The sockets this is the wall of the Mishkan. The sockets over here, these silver things were collected from machzas shekel. That's what the Chumash describes. So basically like this. Rab Chavgei b'shem Rab Shmuel bar Nachman sholosh tumas nemer parsha. There are 3 times the Chumash says you should give money to the Mishkan. One was for Trumas Adonim, so that they'll have money to buy the sockets of the Mishkan. One was Trumas Shekalim to buy karbanos, and one was Trumas Mishkan, which was for donation for material to build the Mishkan. So we darshan like this. The pasuk says Dabel b'nei Yisrael b'ikuli truma. That pasuk says the word truma. That means Zu Trumas Adonim. God wanted you should give a half a shekel to pay for the sockets of the Mishkan. The pasuk says for everybody who donates, whoever you want to donate, you should take my truma. In other words, what I'm going to be used for karbanos, Zu Truma Shekalim. That refers to the Truma Shekalim that was brought, of course, to use to purchase karbanos. That's Trumasi. That's my personal benefit, God says. And then the pasuk continues, and the Torah goes on and says, take from them chelis, ragaman, shalash, people, wool, whatever you want to donate, not whatever, for one of those 13 things that the Torah lists as material to build the Mishkan, you could donate how much you want and whatever you want. Zu Trumas Mishkan. That was the Truma to donate for the Mishkan. So again, there were 3 donations made at the time of let's say Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the Har Sinai with the second Luchos on Yom Kippur. So they made an announcement for 3 types of donations. One, donate for the Adonim, a half a shekel to purchase the sockets of the Mishkan. One is Shekalim to buy karbanos when we're going to finish building the Mishkan and inaugurate it in Nisan. And one is to Truma for the Mishkan in general. We need material to build the Mishkan. Trumas HaMishkan LaMishkan Mashir Yasu. Whatever the owner, whatever the one in charge of the Mishkan, he could decide how to break it up. What was going to be used for the Shulchan, what was going to be used for the Aron, what was going to be used. He can decide. And basically, he mixed all the money together, all the gold, melted it down, so everybody got a part. Even if you donated a drop of gold, a drop of your gold went for the Aron and for the Shulchan and for the menorah. It was all mixed together. We gave it on condition that the one, like Bezalel, who was running the construction of the Mishkan, he can decide what to do with it. Truma Shekalim, the Truma Shekalim, as I said, the carbon went for a carbon. Mashir Yasu, they mixed it all together, and everybody's money became like one. Kedei sheyehei yad kulan shava. So everybody should have an equal share in the carbonos. Trumas Adonim, the truma that was used for the sockets, the money collected for the sockets went for la'adonim, for the sockets. And the idea was, how do you know you're supposed to mix all the money together? Because the pasuk says, "Ashir lo yarbeh, v'hadal lo yamit," that the wealthy person should not give more and the poor person should not give less. So how do you make sure that it's equal? You mix it all together, and the gizbar, the one in charge, decides how to distribute and purchase the items needed and pay for the karbonos needed for the mishkan. So that was using a pasuk in Parshas Truma and connecting it with a pasuk in Parshas Kisisa. But Rab Oven says even in Parshas Kisisa it says the word Truma 3 times. Amar Rab Oven, Apa Parshas Zois Nema Bo Shalish Trumas. Even in this parsha, in Parshas Kisisa, it says 3 times Truma. Maxis a sekel Truma Lashem, Yitain Truma Lashem, Losesis Truma Lashem. So what that means, so therefore it says 3 times the word Truma in this pasuk. So again, one is for Trumas Hamishkan, one is for Trumas Adonim, and one was for Trumas Shekalim. Again, one is for the karbonos, one is for the sockets, and one is for just general donations for the Mishkan. Next, one more point, and then we'll stop. We said on the 15th day of Adar, they read the Megillah for people living in walled cities. Now, the Gemara says it's mashma that you can only be Yaitse, let's say in Jerusalem, you can only be Yaitse the Megillah only if you read it on the 15th day. Loi Kain Omer Rab Chelboy, Rab Chuna, Rav, B'Shem, Rab Chiyav Rabba, that didn't Rab Chelboy say, Hakol Yoitzim Ba'abasa Shuzman Kriyasa, that you could be Yaitse already, the Megillah in Jerusalem, even if you read it on Yudalid. Why does the Mishnah say that the Megillah in the walled cities can only be read on the 15th day? There's an opinion, Rabbi Chelboy said that you could read it, even if you live in a walled city, you could read the Megillah on the 14th day. Why does the Mishnah say it's only on the 15th day? So the Gemara says, Loi bo elolametcha shekol mitzvahs negas b'adar sheni and negas al b'adar rishon. It's coming to teach you, not that when you have to read the Megillah. It's the point was that the Mishnah is trying to say is that all mitzvahs that are noyeg on Adar Sheni are not part of Adar Rishon. But the truth is, that's the main point of the Mishnah, that you can't read it on the 15th day on the Adar Rishon. But once you're reading it, you could either read it in Adar Sheni on the 14th and the 15th. It shouldn't be taken literally. That's the point. You could read it on the 14th also, which is a big chiddush. I never heard of that because we always accustomed that if you live in Jerusalem, you can only read the Megillah on the 15th day. But here's an opinion in Yerushalmi that you could be Yaitse even if you live in Jerusalem on the 14th day. Says the Gemara, Rav Yosei, Rav Acha have a Yosef. Rav Yosei and Rav Acha were sitting. Omer Rav Yosei, Rav Acha. Rav Yosei said to Rav Acha, Loi mistavra el sh'ovar. That only works, I would think that this would work only if, let's say you read it on the 14th, you did not read it on the 15th, and now it's the 18th. So if it happened already, then you say, okay, it was done on the 14th, and you can pat yourself on the back that you were Yaitse. Avalabah loy. But if you read it on the 14th, you really should reread it on the 15th. That's what I think. But the truth is, the truth is, Rab Chelboy said that no, if you read it on the 14th, the next day, 15th, you shouldn't read it. You're already Yaitse. If you were in Jerusalem, you read it on the 14th, don't read it again on the 15th. So the Gemara asks, if that's the case, well, Tani, but the Brisa says, there's a Mishnah that says that Tveria was a place, we weren't sure if it was a walled city or not a walled city. So they advised them they should read it both on the 14th and the 15th. Now the question is why? According to Rab Chelboy, if you read it on the 14th, you're Yaitse, so tell them to read it only on the 14th, not to read it 2 days, because even in Jerusalem, if you read it on the 14th, it's good. So why did we advise the people of Tveria to read it on both days, on the 14th and the 15th? If according to Rab Chelboy is true, if Rab Chelboy, what he said was true, then this should not hold true. Then they should only read it on the 14th and solve the problem. Amalei, so Rav Acha said, I agree with that. In other words, I agree that even if you read it on the 14th, you have to reread it on the 15th. The only time you yoitze if you read it on the 14th, if it's the 18th and you forgot, then don't be nervous. You were yoitze. But if you read it on the 14th, you have to reread it on the 15th, even in Jerusalem. But Amar Rabmana says V'ya'os, Rab Chelboy, who said that if you read it on the 14th, you don't have to reread it on the 15th. He could be correct. If somebody read it on the 14th and on his own reads it on the 15th, Shema ain't Shema like, should we stop him and tell him don't do that? No, because if you're going to do that, nobody is going to ever read the Megillah on the 15th. Everybody's going to say, do it on the 14th. Then everybody's going to always push Jerusalem to read it on the 14th. They'll say there's no such a thing of the 15th reading. That's why we allow them to, if they read it on the 14th, if you have a minute to read on the 14th to 15th, read it both. It's not going to hurt you. It's fine. One more piece. Tanu Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer mitzvahs and ahagas ba'ad sheni ein in ahagas ba'ad rishon. The mitzvahs that you're supposed to do in Ad Sheni don't apply in Ad Rishon. Okay, so reading the Megillah should only be done in Ad Sheni, not in Ad Rishon. Chutz mehesped utaynis shein shavim zeh. Very interesting. Hesped, not to have a eulogy or fasting a tainis chaloim, right? You're not allowed to fast. You're not allowed to fast on Purim Katan, which is an Ad Rishon, and also Ad Sheni. Because even though it's not Purim yet, but once it's Ad Rishon, you don't have eulogies on that day or fasting that day. Rabbi Ba, that's his name, Rabbi Ba, and Rabbi Yirmiyah b'shem Rab Simon b'shem Rabbi Shimon Levi said, halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. The halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, that we push all the reading of the Megillah and everything to Ad Sheni, but Hesped and Tainis is even usher in Ad Rishon. That was the halachas, right, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. But Rav Huna Rabba di Tziporim, Rav Huna, the great rabbi of Tziporin, which is a place, he was a great rabbi there. Omar, he says, not that the halacha is, that Rab Chanina said the halacha is, Hinig Rab Chanina b'Tziporim, Rab Chanina tried to get everybody used to Kahadod Rab Shimon Gamliel. But he said, Loi Omar ele Hinig, he tried to get people to accustom themselves this way. Ha-halalacha loy. But he didn't declare it as the halacha. In other words, it's not clear that is the halacha. It would just so happen that was the way people decided that should be the custom, that we push everything off to Adar Sheni. So Be'ez Hashem, we finished. It's long, the first daf, but if anybody's around tomorrow, we'll do one more daf for tomorrow, and I guess Thursday is B'dikas Chametz, so we'll stop tomorrow.
Wonderful.
Okay, but we're getting the hang of this Yerushalmi. Very interesting. Okay.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, good night.